Chào mừng quý vị quay trở lại với phần cuối cùng của chương trình Đồng tiền thông minh ngày hôm nay trên kênh FBNC với phần trò chuyện cùng tiến sĩ Joe Folkman là chủ tịch của Zenger Folkman là trung tâm về phát triển năng lực lãnh đạo toàn cầu. Welcome back.
Thank you.
There's so many businesses in Vietnam are family business, if you know that. I believe that require a certain kind of leadership.
Right.
Sometimes you lead as, family relationship. Right. You talk to your son, you talk to your niece. What are the challenges for that kind of leadership?
Here's what we just did some research on our Harvard blog, and it was our last blog. What we talked about, or what we found, was leadership is contagious. Now, we looked at leaders and then their direct reports. What we found is if a leader was really good, their direct reports were almost as effective. That's the good news. The bad news is if a leader was really bad, their direct reports weren't much better. So leadership is contagious, and you see this in your family, right? I see my kids doing some of the dumb things I do, right? And I wish they wouldn't, but they, in the States we say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Well, in family businesses, there are some great things. If you're like any other business, there's some dumb things that need to be weeded out. This is why you need some external assessment. Our associates here in Vietnam, Lay and Associates, they can do a leadership assessment and measure your leadership effectiveness and help you understand what the good things are you want to continue and what you need to kind of change and move forward on.
Yeah, and a lot of leaders for that kind of business, they are having a hard time for doing succession planning in Vietnam.
Right.
And what do you make of that? I mean, balancing between, try to find a balance between a family relationship and a really professional boss and employee relationship in order to find out, look for the best talent for this company in the future.
If I were running a family business, I'd want an external perspective to help me understand who's got the potential. Here's what we find. People can do, and people can be great at different things. People can play different roles and really excel. And what's interesting about a family business is, if you think about it, not all your kids are prepared or ready or should be the CEO. Right? In fact, it may be better off that your kids run one function or another, or your kids do something else and you hire somebody to be the CEO and they can enjoy the profits of that company. You've got to make an objective decision about that. To do that, you need data. And you need to have somebody come in and say, we've assessed these people, we know their strengths and weaknesses, here's your best choice.
Okay. You are now running Zenger Folkman Center, which is the leadership development center when you provide a lot of concentration and speaking and training. My question to you is, at what age or what level that people should have leadership training, or how does leadership training affect a person if he or she was not born with leadership characteristic, you know what I mean?
Well, I believe that the only thing that we're born with is about 10% of our capabilities.
Right. It's an environment,
right?
man. Yeah.
Right. And the environment produces most of our skills and capabilities and talents, right? And also learning. We're so optimistic that people can learn. People can develop strengths. Now, I just did a study where I looked at technical professionals. And they weren't leaders or managers, but we assessed them and we looked at the skills that made them successful. And we then looked at the skills of managers of technical professionals. What we found is the same skills that made professionals very successful help the managers to be successful.
Interesting.
Here's the problem. You start thinking about leadership development the minute you need a new leader.
Okay.
It's too late.
When we need a new boss.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Well, it's too late. And we think we're starting that leadership development too late. We think that you ought to take those high potential people in your organization, give them some feedback, help them develop their skills. If they have 2 years of track time to practice that skill, they're going to be prepared for that leadership assignment.
But don't you have to see the potential first from that person? How do you find it? How do you identify that potential?
Well, and that's where you really need the assessment. When we look at people that companies say these are high potentials, we actually find that a third of them aren't. Okay? A third of them just did a good job in their last job. So what we really need is the combination of assessment. Now, believe me, people don't want to be put in a management position if they're not going to be successful. So what we can do is help people guide their career into a position where they can really do a great job and be a genius, right?
And you're saying that the leadership training and leadership development could start as early as you want in terms of improving that person?
The earlier the better. And in fact, a lot of our universities in the U.S. right now are starting to do leadership development and assessments in the MBA programs.
Right in the white end school?
Yes.
So when they graduate from school, they get ready to be a leader. So as leaders, I want to hear your advice for the leaders in Vietnam in terms of living in this world of globalization and the world economy's integration.
Well, one thing that is just at the table stakes, you're not going to be an effective leader if you can't communicate, right? So I think language skills are critical. I think communication skills are critical. We oftentimes talk about a competency called global perspective, and part of that is just building relationships and understanding that people look at problems different ways in different countries. And what's acceptable in one country isn't acceptable in another. You can stub your feet when you don't understand those differences between people.
So as a leader of a business, when things start to go down, your sales going down, you're losing your customers, as a leader, what is the number one thing that you have to come up in your mind? What do you look at?
One of the things that will happen when you see the whole thing crumbling.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit like when you get in a wreck, right? What happens to our perceptual field is it shortens, right? I mean, you think, you look right. I mean, you don't see what's outside the car. Your perceptual field shortens. And the same thing happens when the business is falling apart. Boy, you look internally, right? It is a time when you need to be bold.
Okay. How bold?
Well, and that's not one of the strong characteristics of leaders in Asia. They tend to be
soft.
Well, they tend to resist taking that strong point of view or pushing their point of view. I talked to a leader recently, and he said, "I was thinking this morning, have I ever fired somebody too soon?" And he'd fired a lot of people.
Well, firing people is a tough one, too.
It's a tough one,
yeah.
But you know what he said? I've never made the decision too soon. I've always made it too late. Those people could have had another job, they could have been gainfully employed, but I waited and waited and waited.
And then your company is suffering.
Yes.
Because of that.
And so I think you need to have courage. I think you need to do those bold moves, and you need to do them quickly.
Right. Just fire the terrible one right away.
And we're seeing that in the oil patch in the U.S. right now. Companies are going out of business, but they're just thinking, well, the price is going to go up, the price is going to go up. Well, they're bankrupt.
Okay, so good leaders should know how to recruit the good talents and fire them when you need it, right?
Well, it's making those tough choices, and that's the reality. It's the hard part about business is they don't always go the way we need to.
Well, thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Hope to talk to you later in the future.
God.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Thưa quý vị, vừa rồi là những chia sẻ của tiến sĩ Joe Folkman, là chủ tịch của Zenger Folkman, là trung tâm về phát triển năng lực lãnh đạo toàn cầu. Quý vị có thể xem lại chương trình trên website fbnc.vn. Hẹn gặp lại quý vị trong những chương trình lần sau.